All right, going live in three, two, one. Well, we're starting off a new show with a regular guest. That's Anna Hummel. Anna, how are you doing?
Hi. If I'm being honest, I'm a little scatterbrained at the moment, but we're getting through day by day. Life's been chaotic, but eventful. Let's say that.
So what's going on? Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just kind of like dumb shit, but I bought a new bed frame and mattress, and the bed frame came on Saturday, and I put that together thinking the mattress would come a day or two later, but now it's lost in the mail. So now I just have this bed frame and bed in one room, and my room is pretty small, and there's just shit everywhere. And I was telling you before we started that every single important person in my life was born within the 2 weeks of the end of March and early April. So I've just been kind of going crazy trying to make sure that everybody gets the praise and attention they deserve on their birthday. And I'm going crazy. So
So
that's all.
the people that they're celebrating the birthdays, are they about the same age, or are they spread out?
Range in age from about 30 to 49, but just people I work with closely at my new job, my old job, my roommate, my best friend. So everyone just decided to be born within these 2 weeks. And it's not like everybody's having a party, but you want to get someone a cake, you want to get them balloons, you want to get them a present. I'm big into making the people who are important to me know that they're important to me. Everyone else can literally go fuck off, but there's like my close orbit of friends and confidants and coworkers. I want them to know that they're important, especially if they go out of their way for me. I try to go out of my way for them, but you can only do that for like a small group of people. You can't do that for everyone.
So
But once we get through this weekend, I think we'll be okay.
so does that mean that you have a list of people? I mean, you have everybody grouped up this week, but how about like throughout the year? Is this like a regular a thing with you? I mean, do you have like do you celebrate? I mean, how many birthdays do throughout the year? Is it a lot?
No, because I don't have like a big group of friends. I feel like you really can't maintain a big group of friends as like a stable adult. When I meet people that have like 30 friends and they're 30 or older, I think that they're mentally ill. So, I mean, I just have a close knit group of people, but they all just seem to have, I didn't realize that everybody had some of them are newer friends, but you get close to people quickly when you see them 5 days a week. So,
Right,
um,
right, right. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, so
yeah.
it depends on the situation. I mean, I've been with people 5 days a week, and sometimes I can't stand them. I can't wait to get away from them. So it depends on the
Oh,
situation.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. But I've just found myself that, the people that I'm closest to are all born right around the same time of the year. And so, we're going to comedy shows, we're doing birthday parties, we're doing presents. I'm making cakes and like I'm not Susie Homemaker. So it's not like, yay, I get to make a cake. It's like, fuck, I gotta make a cake, sort of
You
thing.
you
So
cook it yourself? You bake the cake yourself?
well, it really wasn't baking a cake. I made this one cake for my coworker who's done just gone above and beyond for me, like saved my job a couple times. And he's recently lost like 60 pounds. So I was trying to respect his new um, diet. I hate calling it a diet, but like, what he's eating. I don't want to say he's like on Atkins or keto or anything like that, but he's been really trying to cut weight. So I don't want to be like, here's a cake and I made it, so you should eat it. So I made a cake. I know this sounds insane, but I made a cake out of a watermelon. I looked it up
Oh, wow.
online. Yeah. And
Watermelon,
so like I bought a watermelon, cut it, and then you basically just kind of frost it with Cool Whip and then did all these, with strawberries, blueberries, almonds, like stuff like that. So when you cut it, it's just a watermelon with Cool Whip, but I made it look cool. So
that's quite
did stuff like
interesting.
yeah, because I'm big into like health and fitness, and I hate it when you're trying to, get that summer bod, and someone's like, "I made a cake for you. You got to eat it now." it's annoying. So I'm trying to be respectful of, people's goals and their accomplishments and what they have in mind. And I don't want to derail them, so that's why I made the cake out of a watermelon. But it still took time. So
Yeah, no, that's 60 pounds is a lot. In 2012, I weighed, I'm not going to say how much I weighed at first. I lost over the course of about maybe 4 to 5 years, I lost close to 80 pounds. So
wow.
I'm right now, I'm back to my high school weight. So I'm in the same weight I was then. In 2012, I weighed 225 pounds. Now I'm back to less than 150. So
Wow. Can I ask how tall you are?
about 5'8".
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So the
How do you feel now? Do you probably feel a lot better without all that extra weight?
actually, no, I don't feel any different really. The funny
Interesting.
the funny part was I didn't realize I was losing the weight. I had to go on a diet, not because I wanted to, but because of health reasons. I
Mhm.
could eat certain foods. I was eating a lot of sugar, a lot of starch, um, and that basically retained all the fat. And once I stopped eating all that, that's when I really slimmed down. I didn't even realize I was losing the weight at first because I know what keyed me into was the fact that my belt my belt went from the farthest notch to the smallest notch, and
Wow.
and now not only that, but now the smallest notch is too small, is too large for me. So my pants are starting to fall down again. So I have to. So
You
I
get
think
a
I'm
new belt.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think I've lost more weight since then. So I haven't weighed myself in a couple of years, but
And you
I knew
don't feel better?
well, I was going. I have some minor health issues and I had to go on the diet because of that. So
Oh,
it's
okay, okay.
it's not really. It was a factor of having to go change my diet to deal with certain issues I was dealing with. So and that because of
Sure.
that, I don't think I really noticed the difference there. But the funny part was, I mean, when I realized it was like 80 pounds was how much I weighed when I was like maybe 10 years old or so. I don't know. And so I lost as much as I did when I was like a 10-year-old child. You know,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
like
a
I
significant
can,
amount of weight. Yeah. Well,
and people even
congratulations. I know it was unintentional, but and then I feel like even weird saying congratulations because I follow a lot of these like body positivity influencers. I hate saying influencer, but I don't know what else to call them. They have like a pretty big presence on social media, but I'm very intrigued by body positivity and stuff like that. So they always say like you shouldn't congratulate people when they lose weight, and I'm like, well, what if they're happy about it? Like, no, because that's feeding into thin privilege or whatever bullshit. But so when
yeah.
I said congratulations, I was like, should I have even said that? Like,
No, that's fine. That's fine with me. I like
yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. I do know that when I was at about 225, people were starting to say that I was getting big. So,
Did they say
and
that to your face?
well, they were very polite about it. They people I had known for a while saying they noticed I was getting bigger than they'd seen me when I was younger, and so it was.
Well, that doesn't sound very polite to me.
No, I didn't. The funny part is I didn't know I was getting bigger. I just weighed myself once in a while, and one time I went to the doctor's office, and that's when I got weighed in 2012, and that's when I was at the heaviest 225. I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize I'd gotten that big.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, that's when I started eating differently, and it was so gradual. I guess I didn't really even notice it. So it's really bizarre that you asked that. How do I feel? I really didn't notice the difference. The
You
only
said it
thing
was 80 pounds over the course of 10 months.
No, no, not 10 months. I'm sorry, a few years. So like,
Oh, a few years. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So like,
Then that makes more sense because it's pretty gradual.
yeah, yeah. So like 2012, I was 225, and like 2017, I went to the doctor again, and that's when I found out I was less than 150. So,
Wow.
and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, 100. I thought they'd done something wrong. When they weighed me at 225, I thought they did something wrong.
Yeah.
The second time I thought they did it wrong again, but I'm assuming their scales were right. I mean, I think they are. So,
I'm
but
pretty sure they're calibrated. I mean, we'd all like to tell ourselves, like, that's not what I weigh at my scale at home. But I think if any scale's accurate, it's probably the one at the doctor's office.
yeah. So, did you hear about G. Gordon Liddy passing away?
I don't even know who that is.
Okay. G. Gordon Liddy was part of the Watergate scandal.
Okay.
So,
Yes,
uh,
I'm familiar with that.
okay. So G. Gordon Liddy was was in the FBI, and he was the one that ran the operative. Him and a guy named Hunt were both brought up on charges and convicted, and they had to spend time in prison. G. Gordon Liddy spent at least 4 years in prison for his role in the Watergate scandal.
Can we briefly go over that? Not even for the listeners, but more so for myself.
Sure.
This was was it for the re-election campaign of Nixon, and he was trying to get dirt on his political opponents, and he didn't know about it, right? The initial break-in he didn't know about. But then when he found out about it, he lied in the cover-up, and that's how he got fucked. Is that right? Is that about right?
You're talking about Nixon, of course, right? Not G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah, not G. Gordon Liddy. I'm talking about Nixon.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why he had to resign was because he got caught lying that he said he didn't know about it, but in fact he did know about it. But it wasn't his operation. Like, he didn't tell the people to go and break into, was it an FBI building?
No, it's the Watergate office building. The building.
Okay.
That's why they call it Watergate, because the building is actually called the Watergate office building.
Okay.
It's located in anyone's wondering, in Northwest DC, Virginia Avenue near 23rd Street is the basic location.
Okay. But did I get all the major details correct?
Yeah, that's from what I understand. Yeah, from what I understand,
Okay.
I believe that's
I'm
mostly
trying to
correct.
remember. Okay, right.
And yeah, G. Gordon Liddy headed the operation to break in. The other guy, Hunt, I can't remember Hunt's name, was also involved. I don't know all the specifics though. But like you said, Nixon was, from what I understand, like you said, was unaware of the actual break-in, but didn't divulge. How did you put that again? How did you say that again? Because I think you said it just right.
Oh my God, Rachel! Oh my God!
Oh my goodness! Aliens are invading.
Joys.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to keep my cool. Watergate. Okay, so initially,
wait, hold on. What happened?
my roommate set off the fire alarm. That happens from time to time when she's cooking.
Okay.
I'm really sorry about that.
Okay.
I really hate when that happens, and it happens pretty much every time. But anyways, that's okay. Serenity now. He didn't know about the initial break-in. Like, he didn't order the break-in, but then when he found out about it, he lied and said that he didn't know about it. And I think that's where he got screwed. Well, he screwed himself. Is that he lied about it was the cover-up that did him dirty. It wasn't the actual break-in, because he didn't know about it, and then he found out about it, and then he tried to cover it up, and then he got caught covering it up. And I think that's why he had to resign.
Right. And so G. Gordon Liddy was convicted, spent a little over 4 years, in prison, excuse me, sorry, I had too much to eat there. He when he got out, he did not even hide the fact that he did it. He said he'd do it again. He was very proud of the fact that he actually did that. So um he's very ultra conservative. I wouldn't say like ultra right or anything like that, but very conservative. To the point where it's like, this is like when it comes to when I look at people in politics during this early 70s, I would side more with the Democrats because they're more anti-war than they are nowadays. So but nowadays I would side more in the middle, and so he's much more far right than I would say be comfortable with, being myself. I wouldn't call myself that far right in politics. He seems like a nice person. So, but is the as time went on, he actually became a radio personality. So I don't know if you knew about that. Since
I didn't. No, I didn't.
So he started his radio career in the mid 90s. I think it was. I know it was the mid 90s, but I don't remember exactly what year. I want to say like maybe 93, 94, 95, somewhere around there. On a radio station in DC, on the DC area. It's actually in Virginia, called WJFK. And his show got syndicated. It's like 400 stations pretty quickly because that was back during the, after Rush Limbaugh, when
Mm-hmm.
Rush Limbaugh, became real popular and conservative talk became really popular. Um, and I would listen to him on the radio. And there's some interesting things about it. I wasn't really always in line with his politics, but I would listen periodically. I would listen to different people. I'd listen to another guy named Joe Madison, who was much more to the left. So I'd balance it out with listening to back and forth. In the middle of the day, there wasn't really much to listen to, and I was always in my car when I was at that time because I was working as a courier. So I would listen to different types of talk shows. And one of the things that always stood out to me, which was really interesting, was that he was very much into not animal rights per se, but he was very much against animal cruelty, very
Mm-hmm.
much against, which always seems like the exact opposite of what a conservative would be. So he was against animal
Why
experimentation.
why is that? Because they just tend to be pro hunting or.
No, no, like well, usually not really the hunting aspect, but more most of the conservatives I've dealt with or seen, because I used to work at a conservative radio network for about almost 3 years. The
Yeah.
attitude is more or less that the animals are there for us to use whatever we want to do with. They're less than human beings, and
Mm-hmm.
so you can't it doesn't you shouldn't have any you shouldn't have any. They're just there to be for us to use for whatever we want to use them for.
Because I agree with you. I was just trying to unpack like why that might be. But
Yeah.
I think also people on the right tend to be more religious, more so, and I
Mhm.
think maybe in the Bible it says something about like the animals are there for you to
Hmm.
use. Like maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the Bible in and out, but
there
um
was a, there was another guy I used to work with. He was a talk show host. I used to help produce his show, and he was conservative, but his attitude was that if he had a dog, he should be able to do whatever he wants to that dog. It doesn't matter if he wants to put it down; it should be his right to do so. And I disagreed with him on that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter
ooh, sorry,
and things like
go ahead.
that. Oh,
Oh, but I wanted to get into it here. So when it comes to the dog, and I find this to be really interesting, and I understand it's completely cultural. The lines are arbitrary, but it's weird how we reserve. Excuse me. It's I find it strange how we reserve compassion for some animals, and over others. So for example, you really don't see people going. I mean, maybe the vegans, the crazy vegans, but for most people, they don't really care about how chickens are treated. They don't really care about how cows are treated or how pigs are treated because they regard those animals as food. But then when we talk
right.
about animals that we have as pets, typically like dogs and cats, there seems to be so much compassion for the caring of those animals, right? Like we look at someone like Michael Vick, maybe, and we're like, wow, what a disgusting, piece of shit, blah blah blah. But every day, animals are treated so poorly in, farms and stuff like that, or slaughterhouses, and we don't see. I mean, we wouldn't. I don't think people would be happy about, drowning a chicken or something like that. But it's just funny how I find it to be really arbitrary how we reserve compassion for some animals over others. Do you know what I
I
mean?
agree. I know exactly what
Yeah.
you mean. And also you got to take into consideration that when you say dogs and cats, which are the primary pets that people have, they're also a product of selective breeding. So the species that exist today would not exist if they weren't for human beings. Um, the like cats have been selectively bred over 4,000 years, and the species that we have now did not exist 4,000 years ago, based on that, scientifically speaking. Um, dogs also are a product of selective breeding. I've heard several stories saying that like 150 years ago, the average dog was just a mutt, and through selective breeding, we were able to come up with all the varieties we have today. So, um,
Hmm.
and I think that might be a key factor in why human beings are so attached to them, because through selective breeding, we've bred out the ones that aren't friendly to humans anymore. So, like if you have if the domesticated cats and dogs are almost always friendly to people, and that's because the ones that aren't friendly don't exist anymore. They've been bred into extinction. So we only let the ones that breed that were friendly. So therefore, they all like us, and so that helps in making us want to be happy with them, and also they're part of society. But yeah, and the other animals are also, I mean, some people, I remember there was a pig craze back in the 80s, like for
Hmm.
pigs. People used to
Like
have,
as pets.
Yeah, the potbelly pig. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I mean, I know what they are, but I didn't know there was like a craze in the 80s
Yeah,
about it.
I think it was the 80s or early 90s. I can't remember, but yeah, and it was like a whole bunch of people. And then the pigs got to be full grown, and people started realizing, no, this isn't a good pet to have, because they got too big. But but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's not, I don't, I wouldn't know how to. I mean, there's nothing much we can do about it, obviously. But yeah, yeah,
No, it's not I'm not trying to, um, really do anything about it. I mean, obviously, I don't want any animals to be tortured. I'm a vegetarian, but I mean, by no means do I think I'm a noble one because I still eat animal products, so I feel like that might even be worse than someone that eats meat because you're like, you're essentially saying, "No, I want them to suffer and be alive longer because I need eggs and milk." Like, you know what I mean? At least when you kill the animal, you put it out of its misery. But like, I want it to stay alive as long as possible in these conditions so I can have my Greek yogurt, which is, ideally, I'd like to be a vegan. I think it's a noble way to live. But I'm more interested in having friends, so you won't see me like telling people what to eat or anything like that.
gotcha.
Um,
So,
yeah.
so when you're a vegetarian, like you got me, is that because you're doing it so you don't eat animals, or because of health, or because you just want to have a healthier lifestyle?
Um, Initially it was me just copycatting my dad. I was always a daddy's girl, and my dad was a vegetarian,
Ah,
and is now a vegan, full blown vegan, probably for like 3 years now. But growing up, I just kind of followed his path, and I think I had a bad experience with like a chicken nugget. I think I like choked on it or something, and which is like a stupid thing to then change your whole diet. But at about 8, I made the decision I didn't want to eat meat anymore. So I stopped, and then maybe about 7 years ago, I decided I was going to start eating birds. All of a sudden, I had an interest in not being vegetarian, so I did that probably for like 7, 8 months, and then I chewed on like a tendon. It was something weird, and I just was like, you know what? I think I'm done. So it now it's mostly just the idea of eating muscle tissue kind of freaks me out. Like something that was walking around shitting and fucking, and now I'm eating it like that. Like it had to be murdered for me to enjoy this meal. Now that's not to make anybody feel bad about what they eat, but that's just the kind of the mental process that I go through when like I see ribs or chicken, or I'm like, that animal literally had to be murdered like so that you could enjoy the sandwich. Like, but that's just me being a weirdo. But no, I
no, no,
never ever tell anybody what to eat. I always tell people, when I'm a vegetarian, they're like, "Oh god," they like, most of the time it's met with an eye roll, and I go, "No, no, 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 no. I'm a libertarian vegetarian. We're a different breed where we just do our own thing and we don't make comments on what people eat, and we like it when people don't make comments on what we eat." To me, food is very personal. So I don't like to be told what to eat. I'm sure you don't like to be told what to eat. So I keep that in mind, and I just shut my fucking mouth and let everyone do what they want to do.
so I have to ask this.
Sure.
So being a vegetarian, don't you think it's wrong to kill any life form then to eat food to survive? I mean,
You mean like plants, or because they are alive and then you kill them, sort of a thing? That,
yeah,
yeah, I've thought about that before. I think the main premise, let's say just with like vegans, so let's like go even further because I'm not a vegan and I never claimed to be. But let's say, why do vegans think it's okay to eat plants? Well, number one, what the fuck else are you gonna eat? You're gonna eat ice and just live off the sun? Like, obviously you need to eat something with calories. A and B, I think that it's all about the organism's ability to suffer. So if you have like a central nervous system, if you have a brain, you can probably feel pain. Now, I've heard the argument that plants also feel pain. I don't know how much I believe of that. I don't really know anything about that, but as far as what I know, I don't think that they experience pain like animals do. But I also don't fucking know. So
oh, I actually respect what you're saying. And when I was younger, I thought to myself, maybe I should stop eating animals. But then I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm still going to eat plants. So I'm still eating. I'm still killing something in the
Hmm.
process. So my logic was, well, I'm just going to kill. I'm going to eat something anyway that's going to have to die, so I can.
Right.
So it was like I didn't really. I realized that just that's just the nature of things, and there's no way to get around it. I have to survive.
That's
I
very true. That's
have to
very
eat something.
true. And I get lots of like people like to give me the evolution argument because especially because I studied evolution and everything. They're like, well, humans evolved to eat meat. 100%. We were mostly a plant-based species in the environment in which we evolved, but we certainly did eat meat when it came our way. But berries and nuts and fruit and things like that were a lot more accessible than say a big kill. But when you did kill whatever a bison or something like that, you certainly ate it. And it's pretty obvious in the way that our teeth are formed that we did have. I mean, the incisors that we have aren't like a cheetah or something like that where it can really tear through flesh, but I mean it's not completely flat like total herbivores.
Ah,
So yeah, we certainly did evolve to eat meat, and especially fish did help with the evolution and growth of our brain. And a big reason why our brain is so big is because of the fish that we had in our diet. The omega-3 and 6 fatty acids really helped with brain development, and still do. Like women who are pregnant are encouraged to consume a lot of things with omega-3 and 6 fatty acids. So I totally get it. But I always tell people it's a luxury to be a vegetarian or a vegan. If I was in a situation where I didn't have an option to eat anything else but meat in order to survive, I would eat meat to survive. So I know that I kind of live in a form of in a society of privilege where I have the choice and the option to find other alternatives of food. So.
Now I do have one problem with people
Hmm.
who claim to be vegetarians and because they're doing it because they don't want to hurt animals, but at the same time they'll go around smoking pot just to get high. So they're killing the plant the marijuana just so they can get high, but they don't show any remorse for that whatsoever. I know it might sound a little different. I don't think I've ever heard everyone made this argument before, but they they don't want to hurt the animals, which I respect. But then
Hmm.
they have no problems killing, like I said, killing marijuana just so they can get high. And that getting high doesn't do anything as far as keeping you alive. It's not you're not.
Right. It's you don't need it for survival. I really just think that the argument is if you were to dive a little bit deeper is that animals have the ability to suffer. Now I've heard people say, well, plants suffer too. Maybe that is the case. As far as I know, they don't experience pain and suffering like animals do when they're killed. So, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I think it mostly has to do with suffering because I think here's the thing. I think vegans, like if I'm following their ethical and moral philosophy, if you could create meat in a lab, which they're doing, right, out of like say stem cells or something, like say you can take a piece of a cow's flesh without killing it and then like duplicate it and create like a steak. I
Yeah,
think that vegans would be okay with that because it was made in a lab and an animal didn't have to die. So does that make sense? It's like not that they're against eating meat, it's the suffering of the animal
interesting.
that they have a problem with,
But,
right? So.
but you could go one step further and argue, but you're still killing a life form because it is alive in some way. So it has cell. You're eating cells. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it has to do more so with just the suffering. I
I
think
got
that's I could be wrong. I'm not a vegan. I'm not on a board of vegans, but of of what I've kind of like observed, it seems like that the issue is the suffering of the animal. And if I know this sounds weird, but I think that there's a group of, I don't want to call them vegans because they're not, but they'll eat roadkill. So
mm,
like they won't eat animals that were killed for food, but in the event that an animal's accidentally killed, they will eat it because they don't want it to go to waste.
those are we call it we
So-
we call those people from they're the ones that are from West Virginia. So
Oh, yeah, Hickville.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, Moral Hicks. But I've heard of that. There's a philosopher that I follow. I used to follow him pretty closely. His name's Peter Singer. He's an Australian guy, and he would talk about a lot of ethical issues. And he talked about eating meat and stuff like that. And I think he's a vegan. I could be wrong, but I think he is. But I think he didn't have a moral objection to eating roadkill.
Interesting. I, I I don't know how much you'd be able to get out of an animal that's been dead on the side of the road
I
unless
don't
you.
know how clean it would be to eat
Yeah.
an animal that was hit by a car, but it's all about, listen, the animal died by accident. What are you gonna do? So that was kind of his approach.
I pulled a small. I don't know what it was. A small animal, like off the side of the road that got hit by a car one time. I was trying to. I didn't want to get hit again, but unfortunately, he suffered a severe head injury, and I just sat there and watched him die. There's nothing I could do for it. So,
Oh, what kind of
but
animal was it?
I can't remember. It's like
Like a rodent?
it was bigger than a squirrel. Like maybe I want to say a badger, but it's not really a badger. Something
A possum?
maybe a possum. It might have been a possum. It might have
Mm,
been. So it was like that around that size,
mm.
and that would have been an animal that could have been eaten for sure. But the ones most of the roadkill I see are pretty well flattened. I don't see how you get a
Yeah, or maybe if it's a deer, maybe if it's like a bigger animal, you have more real estate. I don't know, but
oh
I just
dear.
thought that was interesting.
I was only thinking of small animals. Yeah, I didn't even think about deer.
Yeah.
So, well, that's. I'm going to get back to G. Gordon Liddy now. As far as
Okay.
it really surprised me that he was really much into animal, compassion for animals, and so he was against animal experimentation. He was, and like I said, for a conservative, that's usually the exact opposite. Usually, the conservatives are all about animal experimentation, so they're for it, and so he would go on the radio, and this was one of the few times when I was really interested in what he had to say because I agreed with what he was talking about.
Mhm.
The only thing I disagreed was he'd bring PETA on. PETA, the
Mhm.
breath of.
Yep.
I don't like PETA. They don't represent a good cause in my opinion for the most part. Some of them are just they're 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 just too far to with political ideology rather than actually trying to save animals. And some of them this has been documented that some of them actually kill animals just so they can't live with people. Now, I'm hoping that's not the vast majority of them,
Whoa.
but there's you can actually I was surprised to hear about that. I've heard several reports about this where they've been
Wait, so are they against having pets?
they're
That makes
oh yeah they're very much against PETA's against anyone owning a pet. You're not
really?
yeah they don't want you to own pets.
So what are you gonna do with all these like dogs and cats that need a home?
That's what I'd like to know too. Just toss them out in the woods and hope they survive somehow. I guess.
Right. I mean, they've been domesticated, so I mean, they can't survive in the wild. So
Yeah, no. And they're basically the goal of PETA is that animals and human beings should not interact at all. They should be completely separate.
really, I didn't know that they were that extreme. I thought it was more so for like the consumption of animals for food and stuff like that. I didn't know it had they dealt with like pets and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what surprised me that he had them on talking about the experiments about animals and how I guess he was willing to overlook some aspects of PETA to look at some of the good things that they're doing because I'm sure they are doing some good things as well. It's just that whenever I hear PETA, I just go, okay, I don't even want anything to do with them because they're just too far extreme in some areas that I don't agree with.
Sure.
But
I know you were talking about how you were kind of surprised that um what was his name again? Gun
which who for
the guy we're talking about. What's his name?
Liddy, yeah, G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah, you said he was kind of so you were surprised that he was a vegetarian.
Well, no,
Um,
no, no. I don't know if he was a vegetarian. I don't know if he was. I just know that he was against animal cruelty. He was
okay,
against.
against animal cruelty. Well, I mean, here's another fun fact for you. Adolf Hitler was a vegetarian.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah. So I mean, it is kind of bizarre. Like sometimes these people have kind of uh strange moral patterns where like oh, he didn't have any sympathy for Jews who were humans, but he thought it wasn't nice to kill pigs and cows for food. So it's like, okay.
Yes, actually, it brings up an interesting story I have. I used to work when I was much younger. I used to work on cars. I used to work in shops, and I would jump every year. I'd jump to a different garage and work on cars. There's one garage I worked on. It was a small Sunoco station. There was me and two other guys that worked there. The two other guys that worked there hated black people. Out there, what they were
Oh
both
my
white.
God.
They outright hated black people. And they were friendly people, though. I hate to say that, but they were
To you,
extremely
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No,
well, yeah, I'm
I
like,
get it.
yeah. But there was an older guy. Well, and there was a younger guy. The younger guy was probably like in his about my age, close to my age, and the younger guy he loved cats, but he hated black people. So anytime anything would happen to his cats, he'd come in real sad one day, be all upset. But he'd always use the N word and how much he hated black people all the time.
Oh
So
my God. Did he have black cats? Is that a
I
weird
don't know.
question?
I don't know actually. But when you brought up that Adolf Hitler thing, that just reminded me of that whole scenario. Um,
Yeah, it is really weird how people have selective compassion for things. Or you could like the Hitler, or you could be super racist, but like, yeah, like you said, but just like so sweet to a cat. Like what? Like you're a horrible person. What the hell? Like,
and the older guy would actually every once in a while he was I think he was testing me. I think he was trying to figure out if I agreed with him or not. He would say things like, Adolf Hitler made some really good points.
oh,
And he would
oh,
say it to me every once in a while. He'd say it. I think he was just trying to test to see if I would agree with him or not. And of course, I
yeah.
never agreed with him on anything.
With things like that, like you have to be very, very close with someone when you start having conversations like that. You That's not really something you want to lead with, but like for example, I've even talked about like Saddam Hussein did a lot for Iraq's infrastructure and the economy and things like that. You probably don't want to lead with like he was a great leader and did a lot of good things because he was also, what was it? Was it Agent Orange? He was gassing or using germ warfare on the Kuwaitis. So like you certainly don't want to lead with like, yeah, he was a great leader, but he also it is a fact he did a lot of great things for Iraq when he was in charge. So but I reserve those conversations for people that I'm very close to and that know me very well and know that my intentions are, to be reflective or to, expand your mind and not to, I don't have an ulterior motive where I'm like trying to convince you that Adolf Hitler was like a good person or that Saddam Hussein was a good person or anything like that. So,
Right, right. Now, I got something else to talk about when it comes to Jigor and Liddy. Um, you know the expression, where you were. I'm sure you've heard this. When something historical happened, you know where you were when you heard the news about something happening. You know,
yes.
like when I was a kid, I used to hear a lot of people say, "You know where you were when JFK got shot."
Yes.
Of course, I was even alive back then, but I used to hear that a lot, and I'd say, "No, I don't," because I wasn't alive. I never could relate to that. The first time I ever experienced that feeling was with the O.J. Simpson verdict when he was found when he was read not guilty in
Mhm.
1986. I remember exactly where I was, and I remember exactly what was going on, and that so I could finally relate to that statement. Uh,
Mhm.
the thing about it was I was listening to the G. Gordon Liddy show when it was read, so I was listening to his show and he came on, they took a break. And I wasn't, to be honest, I really didn't care about the OJ Simpson trial, but I had it on. It was kind of interesting. So it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when they read the verdict. And Liddy came on and he was, paused the show. I mean, and then actually went to the live reading of the not guilty verdict. And he commented as they were reading it, as they read it, I should say. And all I remember is that I was in a parking lot at a at a grocery store, and shortly after I got out of my car, there were black people driving by, screaming, yelling, all happy and everything.
Mhm.
And it was like almost like it was like the best thing that ever happened in the world to happen to these people. And it was like a group of them drove by me and started cussing at me for some reason, like I had done something to them. Um, that was a very weird day. But I do remember that I was listening to G. Gordon Liddy when that happened. So that's one of the things about G. Gordon Liddy that I do remember. I didn't, like I said, I didn't listen to him all the time. I didn't agree with him all the time. But yeah, that was one of the things that I do remember. Um, the it also kind of reminds me of the like 2001 September 11th attacks. I
Sure.
remember when I was there when that happened because I was actually watching the TV when the plane actually hit the first building. So
The first building?
yeah, the
It must
first
have
one.
been the second.
No, the first building. We the wait a minute, maybe you're right. Maybe it was
It
no.
must have been the second
No, you're right. There is video of the first one that didn't come out till later. You're right because the yeah,
because
there
that's why the camera was on the building
right.
because it
You're
was
right. I'm
on
sorry.
fire, and then the second plane hit
You're
the
right. No, I'm
second
sorry.
side.
I remember hearing about it. I'm sorry. I remember
Oh,
hearing
you're
about
good.
it. That's and then what happened? Yeah. So I don't know if you were what was if you remember what you were doing. I'm sure you probably do. Or but
Oh yeah, I remember, and I also remember the O.J. Simpson verdict. I was 9, but yeah, I remember that too.
okay. The one thing I do remember when the first plane hit. You're right. We couldn't because the footage of that had not come out yet. But
Right.
we were looking. What we did see was the now I remember we saw someone there was a helicopter flying by and you could see the big hole at the top of the building. That's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that everyone was laughing. If you can imagine that, everybody, because I was working at Metro traffic, Metro shadow traffic, everyone was just basically not laughing out loud. I mean, like laughing in the sense like, how could an airplane pilot be so stupid as to fly a plane into the building?
Yeah, they thought it was an accident, and then when the
Yeah,
second one, they're like, "Oh, okay, well, this is an
yeah,
attack."
that's what everyone started taking more seriously. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember calling up my dad and saying a plane ran into the building, and he and I were like, what? And it was like we were like kind of laughing at the whole thing, like how in the hell does that happen?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember it's funny that you mentioned the O.J. Simpson verdict because I think that's probably my first I remember where I was moment.
Yeah.
Um and it was something so like what's the word? Um not just like a normal activity, mundane. It was just
Mhm.
like this mundane thing that I was. I would always. My mom owned a dance studio, and it was in a strip mall. And at the end of the strip mall, there was this convenience store owned by a Chaldean man and an Iraqi man, and he would always have like the TV going in the back. Like one of those big. I mean, it was like a small TV, but like, these are the before the days of flat screens. So he would just kind of have it with the bunny, what do you call it, the bunny ears up and everything, and he would always be just like watching it, this like foreign guy. um and I just remember like buying like a Snickers or something, and he like wasn't even like paying attention to me. Like he was just like, hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm just like, okay. And we were just kind of watching it together, and I just remember it like his response like, holy shit. Like he's a free man. So, and now I live in the same city as OJ, so it's great.
But OJ lives in Florida. I thought was he locked up and for that?
No, he got out of Vegas. There was like some situation in Vegas, stolen memorabilia, and he went over after some guy violently. I can't remember, but he got out, and then he moved. He had his daughter lives in St. Petersburg, which is where I live, Florida, and then he moved here. So he lives here, I think.
Oh, oh, I didn't know that he was out. Oh, wow. Okay, I thought
Or
it.
if he doesn't live here permanently, like I mean, I have several people I know that have seen him at like a local bar. One of them, one guy I went on a date with last year, actually, that was pretty much why I went on a date with him, because on his dating profile, he had a picture of him and O.J. Simpson, and I was very intrigued. So I'm like, I need to hear about this story. So we went on a date.
So does
But
that mean since we're talking about OJ Simpson, you go on a date with me now?
yeah. Oh, but you gotta have a picture with him though. I'm like, how did you get a picture with him? He's like, I just saw him in the bar and was like, hey man, can I get a picture? And he's like, he was super cool, really nice. Like I was like, oh, that's another one of those things where it's like, he murdered someone, basically beheaded his wife and another guy, but he's like really nice to the average Joe, the fan that comes up to you.
That's
So.
interesting. That's interesting. I would imagine there'd be a lot of people that'd be angry too, that would come up to him just give him a hard time.
I'm
So
sure there's probably a lot of white women that just kind of stay out of his way, but I think I mean, he's like close to 70 if he's not already 70 now, and it's like, now he's just kind of like a celebrity. Actually, the guy that I work with, Bubba the Love Sponge, he interviewed I think he got one of the first interviews after the not guilty verdict was read, maybe like the following year, maybe it was like 97, like had him in studio and
Oh,
stuff.
really? Oh,
Yeah. So, yeah, that was, I remember talking about that with someone recently. So interesting stuff.
so as far as the moment when the verdict was read, you said for you it was just a non-event essentially. But
But enough for me to remember it. Like I remember where I remember I was like buying a soda and a candy bar, and I was at the register, and the guy who owned the store was just kind of like, we were both looking at the TV. He's like, "Hold on, I got to see this," sort of a thing. And then they read it, and he was like, "Holy shit!" Like, I was like, "Oh, he's a free man?" He's like, "Yeah, he got off." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Because I mean, even though, I mean, I was 9, so I wasn't like really into it, but I mean, I was hearing about it all the time, and my parents, my dad was a news junkie, so the news was always on, and they were always talking about it. So I knew that something big was like there was going to be this big culmination of like it was going to finally be over on this date. So we were all kind of anticipating what it was going to be. But I do remember that, oddly enough, just being in a convenience store watching it on this little TV. So
the thing that got me was when they read it. I was like I said, I wasn't really I didn't really think it was a big deal, but the media was talking about, so, and there was no at the time there was no internet that was really exist. There was, but nothing like it is today. Obviously, there was more like bulletin board services and things like that, and I didn't even
dial up.
that. So, but I was in my car, and the only thing I had was a radio, and every radio station at that time was tuned into that. So there's nothing else to really. It's the only thing I could listen to.
Sure, sure. But yeah, that surely was a historical event. Um, I don't know if you watched, like, it was a long like docu series. It was like probably 6 hours total. I don't know if you watched it. I think it was on Netflix. It was pretty popular a few years ago when it came out, but it just kind of detailed everything and basically how they came to the verdict that they did, and the Rodney King riots and all that, like the way that like the racist LA police, and how this was kind of like the way that they were giving back almost to the, like, correcting the wrongs of
Uh,
those racist police in LA by freeing a black man that was clearly guilty, you
yeah,
know.
that's
So it's just kind of interesting,
yeah,
which is crazy because at the time I remember that there was a big racial divide about like who thought he was guilty and who thought he wasn't, and those certainly like fell along race lines. And it's funny because, like you said, you even saw like black people celebrating and stuff. But like now, if you ask anybody, black, white, any color, they're like, "Of course he did it." Like, of
That's
course he
funny
did
you
it.
say that. I do know one person 10 years ago. We brought it came up in conversation. He's a person that I would consider a really good one of the few people at Clear Channel that I really like, and I would actually help him out if he needed some help. But he does it. He's independent, but he's really I would consider him a really good friend. His name was Chris, and Chris and I came up in a conversation one time. He said no, like O.J. Simpson did not commit the murder. He believes that what happened was someone else killed O.J. Simpson as a threat to him to shut him up, to say, look, this is what we're going to do to you if you don't keep quiet or something to that effect.
Why
And
did he think that? I
I,
mean, what
well,
evidence is there to suggest that?
because the way it was the murder was done, he thinks that someone came in, and it was basically a hit to keep OJ from saying anything else. I don't know what he thinks OJ was trying to keep. What OJ had any, if he had information on something, but he's the only person that I know that nowadays that would say the exact opposite. He still thinks that OJ is not, technically not guilty, but did have some information, but did have knowledge about the murder. So which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't necessarily agree with that, but and I don't remember all the arguments he made about it. He had I like answering your question. I don't know. I can't answer anymore. Other than that,
My question is, if OJ didn't do it, okay, it was a not guilty verdict. Why did they not search for the murderer then? Like,
yeah.
it's like, I mean, if that's the verdict, I mean, this guy didn't do it, then should is the killer still on the loose? Like, I don't know. So it just and it's so funny because now like nobody thinks that he was innocent at all. But and I think defense knew, the prosecution everybody knew this was just kind of like the I guess the olive branch. I don't even know what you would call it, but where there was a lot of racial tension, and this is kind of how we're gonna rectify the racist past is by letting a black murderer off on
Yeah,
a
that was
case that he's clearly guilty in. But
yeah, like
so
that makes any sense. So a rich guy gets let off. So all the poor black people that got injustice in the past, this rectifies that somehow. Sure.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
remember in the docuseries they did mention that like OJ was not really involved culturally with black people at all. Like his
No.
wife
Oh,
was white, his friends were white, everybody
mm,
he associated with was white. And then as soon as he was under fire for this, he started really embracing like his black heritage and tried to really sort of kind of reach out to the black community and be like, I'm one of you guys, and I want your support and remember me. I'm this football superstar, and so.
yeah, I do remember. Obviously, I'm sure. I don't know if you've seen the Naked Gun movies.
No.
He had he was a I wouldn't say a major part of this movie. He was in all three of them, which the Naked Gun movies are basically slapstick comedy. And in the
Okay.
movie, he was always getting beat up really hard, and like like something would I do not remember the exact situations, but like he'd fall off of like he'd be in in a stadium, and he'd fall off the side of the stadium, and he'd come back a few scenes later and be in a wheelchair with his arms all in a cast and his legs in casts. So, yeah, he was always in the movies. He was always the one that was getting beat up really hard. And it was funny. It was done in a slapstick kind of way. It wasn't meant to be serious, obviously. So
Right, right.
it's almost like you could say that in a way that this was his the movies were showing how people really felt about him at the time, that some of them anyway, that this is what should have happened to him. He should have really been beaten up for what he did.
Right. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about, getting back to G. Gordon Liddy, was he had a truck driver story, and this is something my dad was never a fan of G. Gordon Liddy. Like I said, I was a partial fan, but G. Gordon Liddy had this story he'd relay once in a while. He used to be a tractor trailer driver. Um, my sister also used to, I don't know if I ever told you this. My sister used to be a tractor trailer driver as well. Um,
No, I didn't know that.
she
I didn't even know you had a sister, to be honest with you.
Yeah, one sister, and I have my best friend who I've known since we were 10 years old. He's like a brother, basically. So, but he's not related to me. But so basically, my sister, when she got to be in her early 20s, for a year, she drove as a tractor trailer driver, and she told me that when truck drivers drive around, she doesn't do this, but the male truck drivers do. They sometimes carry around a pea jar in the truck. So,
Yes, I've heard of this.
so and so
Ew.
when she
Pee
was being
bombs.
when she was being trained by another driver, she said she was sick. She was actually sick, like she had some sort of a flu or something,
Sure.
and she had to be in this truck with this guy who had a pea jar in his truck.
Don't tell me she drank it.
No,
Please
no,
don't
she
tell
didn't
me she
drive.
drank
No, but she said the fact that she was sick, and the fact that the whole cab of the truck smelled like urine just made it even worse. So,
Oh my god.
so um,
Oh my god, poor thing. Oh,
the
I'm so glad she didn't drink it because I've heard those horror stories before as well.
oh, I've never heard of that. That's
But you can imagine where it goes, obviously.
actually, that's funny you bring that up, because I used to work with a guy that would purposely drink his own urine. So,
Ew. Like as a like is he trying to be funny or?
no, no, he thought I never. This is kind of weird. I was working for a company called Smart Route Systems, one of the traffic reporting companies, and everybody told me he had worked there before I did, and then they were afraid he was going to come back, and there was a big objection because he drank his own pee. And when I was when he came back to work for the company, um, he made some sort of agreement that he would not talk about it this time. Apparently, he had talked about it a lot before, and that's why people were
Oh my
uncomfortable about it.
god.
but I think he and I might have gotten into a minor conversation about it. I think he said that it was something to the fact that it was healthy. Or that's his
Yeah, it had
interpretation.
some like healing properties or like.
Something.
All right. I mean, your body's expelling it for a reason, buddy, but whatever.
Yeah. So, and but he never. So, like I said, I think it was some sort of agreement that if he came back, he wasn't really allowed to talk about it to talk to at all. And but he obviously, if he did, he violated with me, but it wasn't a big deal. It's like we just came up in minor
Oh
conversation.
my god.
But he never, as far as when I worked with him, he never had a cup of he never had a cup of pee on the
Well,
sitting.
that's good. I remember actually seeing that for the first time on the Howard Stern show. I was probably like 11 or 12, and it was very disturbing.
They had a cup of pee on the Howard Stern show.
Yeah, some guy, like they brought some guy on that was drinking his own piss.
Oh
And I
God.
just remember being, you know, I was a child. I shouldn't have been watching, but I was just, you know, I was just so confused, befuddled, scared, like all of the adjectives. Like just like, what? Why? Why is he doing that?
So getting back to G. Gordon Liddy now, when he was a truck driver, he also used a pee jar. He said, and
Mm,
now the story he relayed was he was in his truck. I don't think he was moving when he did this because I don't think it's I can't imagine doing this while you're driving. But
mm-hmm.
I think he was stopped. He had to really go badly, so he got the jar out, and as he's peeing, a bus came by.
Oh God.
It was full of people, and he said that there was one woman in particular that could see directly into the cab of his truck while he was doing this, and she gave them this really weird look as they drove by. I don't remember what he did afterwards, but the story itself was actually pretty funny. I wish I knew the whole story, but he used to relay every once in a while. It's just one of these funny stories where he had he was doing something that was he didn't think anyone was going to see him, but a whole crowd of people saw him. All it was
Silly boy.
like he was
Silly
exposed.
boy.
But yeah, my getting back to my sister, yeah, she did the truck driving thing for like I said for a year, and she said it was I think she said it was a pretty common thing that the guys did that. She obviously never did that, so obviously there are not too many female truck drivers. So
I actually know a few, but yeah, they're not too common. And I don't think they use peer jars just because, you know, they'd make a mess.
yeah, and I do remember. Actually, this was kind of interesting. Have you ever heard of a lot lizard?
Yes, I'm familiar with a lot lizard. What about
Okay,
them?
because my sister, every time she went to park her truck at a truck stop, she had to put a sign on her door of her truck saying "No lot lizards," so she could sleep in
Oh,
peace.
because they would try to come up and swindle you for money and
Yeah, yeah. And
oh god.
for those who don't know, a lot lizard, at least what I remember my sister saying, are basically a prostitute. So
Oh yeah, yeah, but not even like a good one. And they just hang out at truck stops and, you know, make their money that way. So,
yeah, yes. I do remember. Did I ever tell you about the time I drove across country to California and back?
yes, you did
Again,
mention that.
we spent some time at the truck stops. For us, it was two guys, me and my best friend. So it was very easy for us to just go in and say, "Hey, we're truckers and we want to use the shower," and they would say,
Mhm.
"Yeah, go ahead." So it was actually a very easy way. I don't know how it would work for women because I don't think there's like I said, there's not as many women. I don't know how they would feel. I don't think they would want women walking into the men's shower area. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they had a separate shower for women. I honestly don't think they do, unfortunately. But it's just because there's just not enough of a demand, I would assume, for that. So,
Mhm.
but anyway, that was G. Warren Liddy's, I should say, P story, which I thought was I'm not relaying
Yeah.
as best as I
And he
could.
died, you said today?
Yes, yeah, he died. I believe it was today, or within the past day or so. He was 90 years old. Um,
Okay.
he was on radio, like I said, starting sometime in the early to mid '90s, and I would listen to him. That's what the when before you and I went on to do this show. I asked you if you had heard of him, and you said no. I think you said that right. You'd not heard of him, and
No, I hadn't. I did not recognize the name at all.
when he first came on WJFK, where he first started broadcasting, I had not heard of him either at that time. So there was no internet. So I'd ask my dad who he was, and he said, "Oh yeah, he was the guy that he was responsible for the break-in for the Watergate scandal and all that." So, and that's why my dad said he didn't really like him and everything. And I can understand that. It's he's a criminal. He admitted his crime,
And it
and
sounds like he was proud of what he did, like he
oh
says.
yeah, he was very proud of it. He kept on saying he said he boldly stated several times if he could do it again, he would do it again. Um, like I said, there are a few things there were some things I did like about him. He would get too conservative for me sometimes to the point where even I would consider like the Republicans today are kind of mild compared to what they were back in the 90s.
Oh, sure. I mean, everybody's moving in the direction of progressivism. It just seems like who said this, but it's conservatism is progressivism going at the speed limit.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean? Because if you think about it, like if you would take Tucker Carlson now and put him like back in the 50s, you'd be like, this guy's like a hippie queer. You know what I mean? Like that's how people would probably call him. They're like, this guy's cool with like gay marriage and like smoking pot, like, free drug, whatever,
Well,
people would be like,
Tucker Carlson's not for drugs though. He's not.
well, I'm using that as just an example, but like think of whatever conservative Ron DeSantis say, right? Who's like, listen, I don't care how you take your medicine, do what you want to do, sort of a thing, and who's, probably doesn't care about gay marriage and all that sort of stuff. I would say that's most Republicans now. Those people would be considered like hippie liberals back in the 50s. So we're all moving to the left, but the right is just moving at a slower pace, I'd say.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say I agree with you, and I would add to that by saying probably the better word would be beatnik for the 50s.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But anyway, G. Gordon Liddy, he was on in the 90s. My career was slowly taking off at that point. So I was still working full time as a courier. And so I didn't get full time into radio until 1997. And so that at that point, I'd stopped listening to any radio, essentially. I was hardly, except for the stations I was working for. So I would listen to them, and not because, because I worked for him. I felt there's just, I was always listening to those stations. So I didn't listen to his career after that. And after a while, I eventually started. I told you I'd worked at a conservative radio network.
Right, I remember that.
He after I left there in like 2000, and that was it was June of 2000. That was my last time working in talk radio until we're doing this. So it's been 20 years for me doing it.
Wow. Okay, so it's been a minute.
And he apparently, he actually took his show to that network, and so I never got a chance to meet him. So technically, I did see him once, but I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. But so if I had continued working at that network, I would have eventually met him. I think he's a pretty nice person from what I've seen off camera and everything. So I do know, now this is a little different. Do you know Oliver North?
The guy who did the JFK documentary. Or no, that's Oliver Stone. No, I don't know Oliver North.
Oliver North, part of the Iran-Contra affair from the 1980s with Reagan?
No, I don't know that name.
Oh, really? Oh.
I mean, it sounds familiar, but I feel like I might be confusing it with a different Oliver. So.
Okay, let me bring a picture of him.
Yeah.
Anyways, you know he is. Oliver North was involved in the Iran-Contra scandal from the 1980s, and I don't know all the details to that. But it was funny because I never liked Oliver North. He was very much on the conservative side, and I don't like people who are too far to the right. Hold on a second. The funny part is I got a chance to work with him when I was
Interesting.
And he was actually one of the nicest people I ever worked with.
So, even though you disagreed with a lot of his politics.
Yeah, I changed my opinion, changed of him because he was such a nice guy. I didn't change my politics didn't change, obviously, but
sure.
He was a really nice person to work with. I'm going to bring him up right here so you can see. You may recognize him if you see his picture here. Give me a second. It always takes a second to get the right monitor. Okay, here we go. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Here's Oliver North. That's Oliver North. He was a Marine. You don't recognize him?
I mean, I wouldn't like you showed me that picture. I wouldn't know.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Okay. That's funny. I'm not sure. I've heard that people that grew up in a certain like you grew up in the 90s. Is that right? So you're
Yeah. Hmm.
a lot of people. I've heard this. I'm not trying to generalize you as being part of that, but I've heard a lot of people that grew up in the 90s actually don't know who he is, which is kind of funny.
I didn't know. Um, I I I thought it was Oliver Stone, but I clearly got him confused.
Yeah, yeah, completely different Oliver. Yeah.
Yeah, different Oliver. And what's the Oliver that does the British guy that does the show?
Oh,
Last
yeah.
What's his name?
I can't. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember, but
I
yeah,
can't remember his last name.
kind of obnoxious sometimes when
Yes, yes. Let
yeah.
me just I gotta figure this out. This is bothering me.
I think the interesting thing is Oliver North. I know he was. I think he was in Congress for Virginia. I think he represented Virginia where I live for a while. I hate to not remember. It's just I don't. But that's probably one of the reasons why
John Oliver.
John
Sorry.
Oliver. Yes, John
Yeah,
Oliver.
there
Yes.
you go.
Oliver North. I think I can't remember what position he held, but I believe that's probably one of the reasons why he was so nice. Is probably because he was a politician. He didn't want to come across as being rude to anybody. He was probably really rehearsed in that. So
Right. I mean, they're actors, so
yeah.
they got to convince the public that they're on their side. They're probably amongst the most deviant group of people,
Uh,
politicians.
the
All of them, right, left, center, doesn't matter.
Now, as far as like Fox News, you're talking about Fox News, um, and Tucker Carlson. I actually I like Tucker Carlson. I don't watch him a lot, but I do like him when he comes on.
I
If I
think he's great. I really like Tucker a lot.
if you ever see on Fox News a guy named Griff Jenkins, um, he's one of the reporters. He shows up every once in a while. Uh,
Hmm.
he and I used to work on the Oliver North show. Well, I was just a part time. I was full time, but I would fill in to help produce the Oliver North show on a semi regular basis. So
Gotcha.
it wasn't my regular shift. He was doing during the midday. I was more of the evening person. So,
Hmm.
but if you ever see Griff Jenkins was a key part of the Oliver North radio show. So he's on Fox News right now. Really decent, really nice guy. Griff has this really southern accent. And if you listen to him
Hmm.
talk, you can actually hear him still. He still has it. He never got rid of it. It's one of the few reporters on TV that has a really deep southern accent.
Like
So
it's real thick.
well, you can tell he's trying to hide it though. So, but it's there. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be charming, but oftentimes I feel like it people try to hide it because they feel like it makes them look lower class. But I think that there's a certain type of Southern accent I find to be very charming. Um, More like like the Virginia, like a good old Southern man. Like that's nice versus like the hill jack from Alabama that's inbred, not so nice. So like the refined Southern gentleman, like that's nice. I like that accent.
Now, though you bring up the South, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
This is completely off topic, but this is something I've been wanting to ask people for a while. You know how the Georgia state flag used to have the Confederate battle flag in it,
Yes.
and then they changed it around so it doesn't have that in there. But the funny part is, have you seen the modern Georgia state flag? Do you know what it looks like now?
I don't know.
Okay, this is I got bring it up right here.
Is it just like is it a smiley face? Like is it something really
Well, you're gonna I'll bring a comparison up
all
for you
right.
and see what it looks like. Here is bring it up here. Oh, come on. Okay, yeah, here we go. This will work. This will work great. Here's the Georgia state flag. That's the current Georgia state flag. Okay.
Looks like R2D2.
I didn't
Am I
even think about the symbol in the middle there. Um, no, the funny part is they changed it so it wouldn't look like the Confederate battle flag. Okay, now
Mhm.
I'm gonna bring this back down for a second. This is I think you'll find this pretty funny when I show you what this is. Hold on. Uh, I'm not gonna. I don't want to say anything until I bring it up, so you'll see what I'm talking about.
I feel like I'm gonna see a resemblance here, but let's see.
Okay, here we go. This is okay. Here we go. Right here. Do you know what this is?
The original 13 colonies
No,
on the
that's the
right.
Confederate flag. That's the original Confederate flag. So they changed the Georgia flag to get rid of the battle flag, but it now looks like the original Confederate flag. So that's the original Confederate flag there. That's the stars and bars. There's the Georgia state flag.
Oh no, it's just the little R2D2 in the middle of it. What is the difference between I always get the Confederate flag and what's the cross? Oh god damn it. The there was another tab you had opened up. Go down the next. Yes.
This
The first on the one on the top left.
this right
Yes.
here. That's not really a flag that was the closest. I'm a big
What is that called?
That's okay. Let me explain this because I
Okay.
can't be a little bit this. I'm a huge Civil War buff. I really am.
Okay, great.
I'm also a big Native American history buff. So I like both. Those are two things that I love to talk about. So the Confederate flag that you're looking at, the one we're talking, was not really used by anybody except the Confederate Navy. So what you're seeing there is basically a representation of a flag that was actually used by the Army of Northern Virginia, which is this little flag right here, which is more of a square shape. So what you're seeing,
it was only used by you said the Navy or the Army?
The Navy. The flag that looks like this is it takes a little bit to explain here. The Navy flag looked like this. I think there was some slight differences, but generally it looked like this. So the Confederate Navy used this flag. Okay, but no, there was not used anywhere else on any kind of regular basis until what happened after the war. People were putting Confederate flags all over the place, so they used this one, the rectangular shaped one, as a representation of what they remember the Confederate flag looking like. So it's not really an official flag, except for, like I said, the Navy used a variation that was kind of very similar to that. So the only thing that comes close is the Army of Northern Virginia, which is this smaller flag, which is a square flag. So when you see this flag right here, it wasn't really actually used during the war by any military, except, like I said, the Navy had a flag that was similar, but the Army did not. So this flag was not used by the Army at all. So it was the flag in the South. The flags were commonly, you can see all the different variations on there. If you look on the screen, you'll see like there's they call it the stars and bars because it resembles the stars and stripes. Instead of having 13 stars, it has 3 large bars. So that's why the stars and bars is called the stars and bars. That's what this flag is.
Gotcha. Well, what is the one the cross? The cross. What do people call that flag? I've heard a name before. I forget.
The cross? Which one's the cross? I'm sorry. Which
The
one
one that the Navy one.
This one? Yeah, that's yeah, they often refer to it as the battle flag, but that's not exactly correct. It's it's a representation of what people think of when they think of the flag. It actually was more developed after the war. So it wasn't really, it's a representation of what people think of when they were trying to, because the people fly the flag a lot after the war in the South. So they came up with this as a representation of what they remember. This was not the actual flag that was flown by.
Gotcha.
Really
Yeah, because I always get those two confused because to me they both represent the Confederacy, but I don't know which one was the official flag or why they were different or what they represent. So
here's the official flags right here. This is probably the best one to bring up. The one on the that's not what I want. Oh, okay, that does. There we go. Yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah, the very first. Well, this was the first one, the Bonnie Blue flag. Then when the states started to organize, then they came with the stars and bars. They say the battle flag. That's not right. That is not right because it was not really. And there might have been some variations that were similar to that. That's a major misconception about the Confederacy. They didn't really use that rectangular shaped flag in the battles.
But you said most people refer to it as the battle flag.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So that's a common. That's what it's called nowadays.
Right, just to denote it.
Yeah. I've always found it funny that people think that that's what they use. The Confederacy didn't have like a uniform flag because they were still organizing. So they were constantly changing everything. So each state basically had their own flag that they flew. So
right.
And so they would try to differentiate, and the stars and bars look so much like the stars and stripes And a lot of times they thought they were allies at first because they see the flag and they say, "Oh, that's our side," and then they start changing it around. This right here, what they call the stainless banner, had a square version and it was white. The reason they use that they did that was to differentiate from the stars and bars because there were no stripes at all. So
Mm-hmm.
and then what unfortunately that was apparently considered to be it looked like a surrender flag. So they decided
Right.
to put the red bar on the side so they knew they weren't surrendering. But yeah, the battle flag is kind of hard to describe. That's why I can't give you like a direct answer. So the there was a flag that was used like that in the Confederate Navy, like I said, but as far as using it in battle, it was not like a regular a long rectangular version of the flag was not used by anyone on a regular basis. There might have been some smaller, infantry units that had something similar, but as a
Mm-hmm.
not on a grand scale is what I mean to say. So it's basically what people think of after the war. It was basically what everyone decided would be afterwards. We'll use this as to represent what we remember as the flag being, so to speak.
Gotcha.
So
Because to be honest with you, that's the one I see the most.
yeah, yeah, and it's very popular because it became popular after the war. That's one of those funny things. It became popular, like I say, after, not during the war, but after the war.
Right. Right.
So, and
Makes
like I said,
sense.
the one that people are familiar with, or the one that was used during the war, would be a more square shaped one that was often used in conjunction with something else. So,
Right.
it's there's just so many different flags. It's the Americans the Union, I should say, used the regular United stars and bars, or stars and stripes. So that was pretty common. But the South had so many different variations. Each state had their own ideas as to what to have. So they were all over the place back then. It wasn't
Yeah.
the
Wasn't
best.
super. It wasn't really uniform. Right.
Right, they were still trying to get everything. In fact, like the idea that the Confederacy they wore gray uniforms. There were a lot of Confederate soldiers that wore blue uniforms, so they were mistaken for Union troops.
Oh God.
So it's anyway, it's one of my things. The here's one that's interesting. They were like I said, they were all over the place. So as far as the different flags, there was a flag that had that like what you call a cross, but it was more square shaped on a regular basis. And
Right. Right.
so
Well, interesting. I didn't. I was unaware of all of the flag history. So thank you for that.
oh, here we go. There you go. There you get the yeah. I was
Oh God, it's basically identical.
I think it's so funny that they got the Confederate flag in there anyway. So it's
Yeah. What are they doing? What are they doing?
but it's one of those silly things. It's like I was like they got rid of the battle flag, but it's like people just are so ignorant about what the flags look like. It's like you don't know that you actually got the real Confederate flag. It looks just like it now. It's even the whole flag is
I
if you
know. I know. It just completely defeats the purpose.
so anyway, I just like that. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap everything up there. Did you want to add anything else?
Um, no, I think that's pretty much it. I think we covered a lot of ground and I learned a lot. So thank you so much. And I think I told you last week that the was it Penn and Tiller, you were
Oh,
or Teller, you were the one that told me about that, and literally days later it got brought up on the radio. So I really appreciated that because I was like, I know who those guys are. That's awesome.
the
So yeah, it's great.
the
I
funny
like
part is
learning
that
new things.
it's cool that it's funny that you didn't know who they were in the first place because I thought they were more of a household name kind of a thing. So that's pretty cool that
Yeah,
you
I
got to
mean,
know who
maybe
they
they are. I mean, some things are just bound to miss my radar, but I definitely knew who Penn was because I follow the atheist kind of community, and he's big in there, and he does a lot of these like Think Big or Big Think. It's like some YouTube channel. Um, so I knew who he was, but I didn't know that he was like a collective unit with that other guy Teller. So, but now I know.
Yeah,
So.
have you had a chance to watch any of their stuff? Besides what
No, no. I'm watching this new show on Netflix called Love on the Spectrum. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's addictive.
Love
So,
on the Spectrum? You got
yeah,
what
it's a dating show about people who have autism and how they date and maneuver. Because I mean, dating is hard enough as it is. So imagine if you had like a social disorder. You know, it's
Oh,
confusing. So it's an interesting show. It's entertaining, it's funny, it's charming. So I've been kind of into that lately.
I have a it's interesting that you bring that up. The my friend Trevor, who I told you is my best friend,
Hmm.
one of his nephews suffers from a condition that I always wondered how he'd be able to. He's probably a little bit older than you.
Okay.
And people think he's suffering from like he's mentally challenged, and he's not. What happened was when he was 3 years old, he was in a serious automobile accident, and his head got shoved back and forth several times.
Oh
So
my god.
he's got like a mind of like a 6-year-old child, and he's like I said, a little bit older than you, I think.
Okay. So he
So
has like he's like a permanent child.
yeah, exactly. And when you talk about the dating thing, that just reminded me of that. I'm wondering, how does he get dates? How would he? In fact, one time I was dating a woman. Her name was Eve. Eve and I showed up. We'd show up over to there, and like he come to me to the side and said, "How did you get her as a girlfriend? I need help." So,
Yeah.
so
Were you able to help him at all?
no, I wasn't. Unfortunately,
Okay.
this is about 10 years ago. So, but yeah, always felt sorry for him because I was like, how does he? How does he? How would he vote? Even he doesn't know how to do it. So, but I was just, how does it work on the show? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, I've only seen a couple episodes, but they just basically match autistic people with one another, and there's kind of just like a level of understanding, much like anything, like almost like a culture or um, I guess that, or like someone who has the same interests. It's just kind of like a shared experience with two people. So people with autism just kind of get each other. But I mean, as you can imagine, dating is already awkward. Like even for people who are really like have a high emotional or a high EQ, emotional quotient, it's confusing and it's awkward and it's do we do this, do I do that? So you can only imagine how much worse it would be if you can't read body language or if you can't read people's facial expressions. Like it's really interesting, you know. And but what's really funny about it in a charming way is how honest the participants are, you know. I mean, I'm sure we've all been on a date we didn't want to be on, or we're bored, or we're like, I want to get out of here. And we find ways to politely excuse ourselves. Well, they'll just be like, this is boring. I want to leave. Like, and you just got to go like, fuck, that's pretty cool. Like you just say it like, I'm out of here. Bye. Like, you know what I mean? So, it's just kind of funny. Like there's this almost inability to lie with people with autism, it seems, where um like one of the dads was trying to tell his daughter, like, okay, well, you know, if you feel, you know, anxious or anything, just go and you know, you can just go and like powder your nose. And it's just like an expression, you know. And she's like, well, I don't even have powder. And he goes, well, it's just an expression. And she's like, well, why would I lie to him? Like it's like, so she just like, it was just really cute in that way, you know.
Gotcha.
But
What's the name of it again? Maybe I'll check it out.
Love on the Spectrum. It's on
Love.
Netflix.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
You'll
Alrighty.
like it. It's certainly interesting. So
Alrighty. Okay. Yeah, and I guess we'll next week we'll do the same show, and well, I guess that's it for tonight. So thanks.
yes, yeah. So thank you so much for having me. It was a good time.
Thanks for everybody for watching, and I'm going to end this. Go ahead and hang on for a second there. I want to tell you
Sure.
something after we're done here.